Hey everybody, my name is Jared King and you are watching The Read. Tonight I have a very special guest. His name is Jeffery Spivey and his website is Uptown Bourgeois. His book is titled It's Okay If You Don't Read Everything, and in both he's provided you with a ton of commentary and fun stories. But tonight you're going to hear his story, everything from being called in high school to how he became a bad and bougie fashion blogger in the Big Apple. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, Jeffery Spivey. Hey, Jeffery, how's it going?
Hey, hello, everybody. And then, sorry, my last name is Spivey. It's a
Spivey.
common
I always
mispronunciation.
thought it was something else.
No, it's very common, very common.
Okay, all right. Thank you for correcting me on that. So now I got it. So a lot of the questions that I came up with were kind of centered around your book, If You Don't Read Everything. Now, I have to say, first of all, after reading it, it's definitely not okay if you don't read everything. But because I personally enjoyed a lot of your essays in there. So I'm going to kind of jump right into it. So in your book, you mentioned a number of times of living or going to school in a predominantly white area. So where are you from, and how have the demographics of your area affected you growing up as a youngster?
So originally, I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. My dad was in the military, so we moved around quite a bit. So I lived in Ohio, like in a suburb of Dayton for roughly 10 years, and then lived in DC for a year, and then the rest of the time in Florida before coming to New York. So all of those places were small suburbs or tiny towns, predominantly white, with the exception of living in DC. Of course, living outside of DC, that was the first and only time I lived in an area that was 100% Black, school, neighborhood, like everything. So, I mean, for me growing up, I never really felt like, like I was the only Black kid or one of 10 Black kids. Like I never like saw myself as separate or different. So, and, I think in terms of like my interactions with other Black people, I think that's where it started to kind of, stick out to me. That's where I started to feel kind of different. Like when I moved to DC, that's when like everyone made it very apparent to me that I spoke proper English, and that I dressed differently, and that I was a very different Black kid from what they were used to. So I think that probably had a bigger influence on me. I think that experience than living in these areas that weren't particularly diverse.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny because I feel like a lot of us get, I know I personally have felt that sometimes. It's good to hear somebody else kind of kind of live that experience, so that, that we're not all, I'm not like the only one out here that's like, that's felt a little bit different from everyone else. So in one essay, you discussed stereotypes you've had to endure as a tall Black man. And in high school, the kids would call you Big Cock Jeff. And in college, you preemptively joked about not playing basketball in order to not hear the inevitable question. Judging by what you wrote, it seems like you've changed your approach to these types of things. So what have you learned from your experience of being stereotyped?
Well, like high school is different because, when I wrote that essay, like I was looking back on high school with like a different lens. So I think when I was in high school, I didn't see it as a stereotype, like everybody was making fun of everyone for different things. So for me, that didn't stick out as like a racial stereotype. I just thought it was, like it was my like embarrassing thing that I had to deal with when everybody else was pointing fingers at each other, and it just kind of became like this running joke. I think in college, that's when I started to realize like I'm one of maybe like 2 or 3 other Black people that are here like on an academic scholarship and not on an athletic scholarship. So I went to Flagler College, which is a really small private school in St. Augustine, Florida, like very conservative, and definitely like mostly white. I mean, I wasn't the only Black kid there by any means, but there were a lot of Black guys there that played basketball. And I was one of the few that did it. So, I felt like I stuck out for that reason there, because everybody else kind of like stuck together. You could be in like just you see it in schools, you see it in some workplaces that, like all the Black kids tend to kind of group together and hang out together because they're looking for like that bond with other people when they're in unfamiliar territory. So when I was there, like I didn't have that bond with those kids because they were all playing basketball together and I was like the one who wasn't. But now, I mean, to me, I think now I see the value in in being around people who are from different backgrounds and, using those opportunities to kind of, shed light on differences and point out to people when they're saying things that could be considered stereotypical. And I think, my view of it is different now because I can look back on it and understand where it occurred. And then, I can recognize it now. At 32, I can see it when it happens and say something and point it out.
Yeah. So did you move to New York for college or after graduating? And how soon after did you meet your husband, Hiram?
I moved to New York in 2007. So it was like roughly 2 years after graduation. I had interned here back when I was still in school. So I was like, I have to come back. I have to move to New York. Like, no matter what happens, I'll just figure it out and make it happen. So yeah, I moved in 2007. I didn't meet Hiro until the end of 2014. So there was a long period of dating and lots of funny and some awful stories in between.
All right, so now I'm curious. Do you have like one awful story that you could share? Maybe that's
not. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I mean, one time I went on a date with someone. Like we were in Chinatown, and like everything in Chinatown is cash only, and I had never carried cash like ever. And so I had been asked out on a date, and the guy did not have enough money to pay for our meals, which was probably like $30 because like Chinatown is a pretty affordable neighborhood. So I had to leave the date to go get money from an ATM, and I don't know, most people probably would have left like instead of going back, but I went back and paid for it. I should have left him there to like do the dishes or something, but
oh my goodness. Okay, so it got better as time moved on, and you were married late last year in 2016. Mm-hmm. But why don't we go back to the beginning of this relationship? So how did you and Hiro meet?
We met on OkCupid, which, I think a lot of people don't think you can actually meet someone on OkCupid, but you can. Yeah, we met on OkCupid. He was away for New Year's Eve. He was in London. And I was here in New York, so we were kind of emailing each other, and then we started exchanging voice messages, like after we exchanged numbers. And when he got back to New York, we went out on our first date, and it was kind of instant. We connected over dinner, and then like that was it. It was instant. It was quick.
Okay, so I want to go a little bit deeper with this. So what was it about Hiro that and the connection that you both had that made things progress into marriage?
Well, I mean, I think initially for us, we both were very honest with each other. Like there was never there were no games. There wasn't like, any period like I'm going to wait 3 days to answer this message because he didn't get back to me right away, or like I'm going to pretend like I don't want this so that I don't scare him away. Like there was never any of that. Like we both were very honest up front about what we were looking for, what we wanted. And, like with that pretense removed, it was much easier to get to know him. And, over time, I mean, I think the big connection is like, we're kind of like yin and yang. Like I could be really serious and like very focused, and he's very like easygoing and lighthearted and spontaneous, and we balance each other out really well. And I mean that works when you're planning to go out to do dinner, and then that works when you're sharing a space with somebody, and and you're around each other all the time, and you're building a life together. So it works in like every facet of your life.
Very cool. Okay, so what advice do you have to for the single men out there looking for their own happily ever after?
Yeah, for the single men, just work on yourself first before you worry about connecting with someone else. Because before I met him, I had spent like a whole year just kind of working on myself and meditating and writing and kind of figured out what I wanted to do with my life. And I think that I wouldn't have been in the right headspace to get into a really serious relationship if I hadn't done that first. So work on yourself.
Okay, sounds like pretty solid advice.
Yeah.
I know that I kind of had to take a step back from dating for a while myself to kind of just like, figure out what I'm doing. So
Yeah.
I'm back in the game though. So anybody out there? No, I'm just kidding. So you you earned a degree in communication with a focus in print and broadcast journalism. So how did you end up in retail management, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, that's a $1 million question. During school, like my last semester, I was working for Banana Republic at a factory store that was in the same city where I went to college. And after college, I really didn't know what to do next or how to actually get a real job in journalism without having to relocate to some really small town in Texas or get a job that wasn't going to pay me enough to live. So I went back home and I moved back in with my mom, and I kept working at Banana Republic. And, one thing led to another. I got promoted kind of, I think like within my first 6 months of being back at home. And then things just kept going and going. And then I thought let me stay with this company and, follow them to New York, because this will be my way to get to New York and at least be able to make money right away when I get there. And then that was supposed to be like a 6-month plan, a year tops. And then the next thing you know, it had been 11 years. The experience was, retail is rough. Like, have you done any time in retail?
I have, and people who know me are probably laughing right now because I was working at Banana Republic for a good 6 years before I just got myself together.
So you really know.
I know.
Yeah, it's a really demanding industry. Different ways than what working as an entrepreneur can do. Like it dictates your life. You have to do everything in your life around your job, because if something goes wrong, you have to stay later. If like someone gets sick, you have to go in. Like there's so much that's unpredictable about it. Plus, the job itself is just really demanding. It's very physical. I think when I was 22 and working in retail, I loved it because it was different every day. No 2 days were the same. You got to meet all these different people. And like here in New York, you work in a store and there's thousands of people that come in a given day. And most of my really, really good friends here in New York City, I met through work. So that was a really good experience, but it was also just really tough. And I knew by the end of my time in retail that I was completely over it and I needed to get out. And it kind of kicked me out towards the end. And I was like, it's fine. Like, I don't want it anymore. I don't want to go back, and I have to figure out how to avoid going back. So I did.
Got you. So you went from retail to starting your own business, which includes freelance writing on Fiverr, and I think we discussed earlier. You have a few other platforms that you're working on as far as freelance is concerned, and you also started a fashion blog, Uptown Bourgeois. So why choose fashion as your focus?
At the time, I thought that would be a good way to differentiate myself. Because when you look at like fashion bloggers, especially male fashion bloggers, there's not a heavy concentration of Black ones. So I thought that it might be easy to kind of stick out. And I thought, coming from retail, fashion retail specifically, I had some insider knowledge on how the business worked. And I thought too, with the journalism degree, that I could write stronger pieces than what I had been reading from people that I was following. And and as a kid, I always read GQ and Esquire and Details when it was still being published. And I always liked fashion and I wanted to be a part of the business somehow. So instead of trying to get a job at GQ, I just decided to create my own business. So that's how Uptown Bourgeois started.
Okay, so one thing you said, wait, Details isn't being published anymore. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it went out of print in I think November 2015, and then they kind of consolidated it into GQ. So if you type in details.com, it just takes you to GQ.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
See, I've been like I think we met because I had a fashion blog at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm completely out of it at this point. So the fact that I don't know that Details actually doesn't exist anymore is like pretty telling. I'm like in a completely different space now. So there's an essay. We're going to talk about a little bit of fashion now since we're on that topic. So there's an essay in your book where you defend men who wear shorts. Why did this need defending?
When I wrote that, there was this article. I forget what publication it was in, but there's this critic / satirist named Fran Lebowitz, and she expressed opinions about a bunch of things, but one of them was that men should never wear shorts. And I just thought that was so absurd. But then there were all these other like response pieces popping up where people like agreed with her. And I was like, how would men survive the summer if they don't wear shorts? Like, that's so silly. It seems like something you would believe in like 1920. It just seemed odd to me, so I wanted to write an article kind of like, defending us because we deserve to be comfortable in summer too.
Right. I thought that. When I read it, I was like, pretty much applauding every word you were saying, because how else am I supposed to? I can't even fathom walking around in, all summer long. It gets way too much. But the other thing is. Okay, so maybe I'm revealing something a little too much, but my dad always tells me to not wear, like, I can't wear shorts if you have like hairy legs.
Yeah.
The thing, because I didn't think anybody really cared, but when he tells me that, I get like self-conscious.
I think that was part of like her argument, was about people having hairy legs or having like pasty legs that haven't been tanned, or but everyone should wear them. You have hairy legs, you have pasty legs, you have whatever the problem is, just wear your shorts, be comfortable, like get some air in there.
Gotcha. Okay, so then a few pages later after that essay, you're condemning socks with sandals. So what's so wrong about that?
It's just bad. I didn't even know if there's like a official like fashion way to like to define like why it's bad. But the fashion business apparently doesn't think it's bad, because when I wrote that essay, there was I think like Tivana had released a lookbook of how to wear socks with sandals with like all these different looks, and it was on a bunch of different runways during that season. And I don't know. It's like, it reminds me of like what the basketball players in high school would wear like when they were going to a game that was away from school. Like, that's what they wore on the bus because they didn't care about what they were wearing. But it's weird that people would make the choice to do it on purpose.
Right. And I feel like that's probably the only time you should actually wear. Like, I'm pretty much just playing devil's advocate with this question because I agree with you completely. But I'm like, that's like the only time you should wear socks with sandals. Otherwise, just like, don't do it at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. So next question. Why is it so important for the fashion industry to diversify its models?
I think it's important because, like, for all the young kids, like the young Black kids looking through magazines or looking at thumbnails from runway shows, they're looking for themselves. Like, they're looking for something that represents them, to be reflected back in what they see. And when I was a young kid, when we were young kids, there weren't that many Black models. You could name them on one hand. I really can't go further than Tyson, really, but it wasn't that common. And I think that creates identity issues for people when they they see one standard of beauty that doesn't reflect them, they feel like they're not included in that. So even though fashion can be kind of seen as frivolous and not important, and that there's like bigger battles to fight, especially now in 2017, I think that's one place that people always look to. It's like it's a means of escapism, but they also look for reflections of themselves, and they want something or someone to reinforce the fact that their culture is beautiful. And I think more diversity in fashion helps, because it's a really influential industry.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think one of the biggest things for me as far as writing is concerned is just kind of putting out a lot of different characters out there that you don't normally see. I think diversity is very important. So in all areas, especially fashion, because that's one of the places where people, kind of get self-esteem from what they wear and what they see even on the runway. They kind of get some idea of what they should portray themselves. And so I think I agree with you. It's very important. But so now to talk about fashion blogging, I guess. So you have a blog titled "Is Fashion Blogging Dead?" So what is your answer to that question? And how has that impacted your blog content and led you to creating this book?
I think, well, to answer the question, I don't think it's dead, but I think that it's dying. Because it's saturated. I think when fashion blogging first started, there was this group of people who were kind of rebelling against the standard in fashion and saying that, like, I'm not going to depend on magazines. I think I dress cool and I'm going to show this to people. And those first movers ended up being like millionaires, and they got invited to Fashion Week, and they kind of disrupted the privacy and the exclusivity of fashion. And like, that's when it was cool. Now people post pictures on Instagram and they don't even have websites, and they think that they have a fashion blog, and there's like a saturation. All the photos look the same. Like, none of the fashion is really that exciting. There's not anything super unique about it. So I think the fact that there isn't anyone kind of rising above or standing out from another person is going to cause that version of fashion to kind of die off. There might be something else that replaces it, but I think it's not as impactful as it once was. And it's almost kind of a parody of itself. Like, it's easier to make fun of it now than it is to actually like jump in and do something that's fresh or different. So with my blog, I think, I started to realize that I wanted to do something more important. I had been kind of playing around with different ideas and topics before that. And my background is in journalism. So, I mean, when I was 16, I was writing editorials about George W. Bush for like the city paper. So, I started out writing about things that were more serious, and I felt like I was being called back to do that with every fashion show. Like, every time I had to pass by another blogger with their own photographer, like not even paying attention to the runway show. Like, I just felt like there was something more important for me to do. So that's how I started coming up with different content and talking more about my writing journey and just my everyday life, and assembling the book. The book was almost kind of like an experiment. I was like, I want to self-publish. I don't want to have to pitch to a publisher and wait for like a year for somebody to get back to me. Like, I just wanted to try to figure it out. So I just pulled together all these essays and wrote a couple new things, polished it up, put it out, and I think it did better than I expected, because there was a big learning curve for me with this being my first one and doing it on my own. So I learned a lot. But in terms of content, like, I really wanted it to be something that kind of expressed different viewpoints on different issues, and kind of served, it was kind of like a Black queer male point of view to kind of counter all those other essay books that are out there. That's the female like comedian / writer essay collection is a big thing in publishing. Mindy Kaling and Lena Dunham and Amy Poehler and like all these really funny women are writing these books. But I wanted to do kind of my own version of that.
Yeah, I think you definitely achieved that. And I think I had mentioned or you had mentioned even in your book that you called yourself the Black gay Larry David. So can you explain for people why you said that?
I mean, when I mean, really, like in the essay, I describe kind of sitting at dinner with one of my friends and just kind of like complaining about like things that New Yorkers complain about, like complaining about like public transportation and like the different like weird like crotchety things. But I felt like I sounded like an old man, and we were sitting probably like 2 inches away from the people that were next to us, because every restaurant in New York is like the size of a shoebox, and you're always sitting like right next to somebody. And they like kind of kept looking over, like peeking over while we were talking. And I was like, oh my God, like I kind of sound like Larry David right now. And then I started thinking through like all these instances in my life where I like complained about things in the same vein. But I feel like I relate to him because in the end, he always means well. even if even if he like does something really crazy or really outrageous, like he always means well.
Mm-hmm. Got you. Are there any topics or anything that really fire you up, or is there anything that you or that your viewers or readers kind of gravitate to when you write? Is there any specific topic or anything?
I mean, I definitely think when I write about entrepreneurship, I think a lot of people are kind of honing in on those pieces because I mean, I'm connected to a lot of people that are business owners, and I think there's a lot of people in my readership that are considering working for themselves or getting into business. So whenever I write something along those lines, I think it gets a really good response. And then I wrote a piece last year about hair, about like black male natural hair, and this decision that I was mulling over to grow out my hair. And I think like the essay did well, but then I did like a video form of it, which is kind of taken off on YouTube. So I think that there's definitely a big group of people out there that want to talk more about Black identity. I think especially now and in the Trump era, people are ready to talk about identity and why it's important and what it means. And I definitely want to explore that more this year.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good segue into the next question. I mean, at least the first part of your answer about kind of jumping into your dreams and entrepreneurship and all that. So in your book, you give us all of the lessons you've learned from your experiences. What is your advice for people who feel stuck and are having a hard time kind of jumping into their dream?
I mean, for me, kind of how it kind of happened. I mean, I kind of got shoved. So I made the decision because I was like forced to decide. I think people shouldn't wait until they're forced to decide. I think, the minute that you realize that you're unhappy in a situation, you have to figure out what it is that you really want to do, and then do your research, do your homework, and figure out how you need to get started and how realistic it is for you to get there, and figure out your goals and how you're going to achieve it, even if it's just a little bit at a time. Because I definitely wouldn't recommend getting started the way I did, because I had left Banana Republic. I went to work for a startup. I was only at that startup for like 6 months, and it just really wasn't a good fit for me. So then I ended up without a job, and then it was only after I was unemployed that I decided I wanted to try to write. So I had like 2 or 3 full months where I made absolutely no income while I was trying to figure out how to become a freelance writer and how to do that. So I definitely wouldn't recommend people doing it that way. At least save money first before you just walk out and quit, because you need money while you're figuring things out, no matter what it is you're trying to do. Even if you just want to be a writer, you still need money because you have to pay your rent. So
yeah, I think it almost always happens that you find yourself between a rock and a hard place before you have to kind of just find a way to make it work. And I feel like when you were in that situation, that may have been, what kind of took you off in that direction. Would you agree, or were you kind of planning? Were you kind of planning to do this?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't planning. I mean, it was always in the back of my head, and I think after I left Banana and I was working at the startup, I started thinking like more and more and more, like, how can I have my own business? how can I figure this out? But I wasn't planning to leave anytime soon. It happened all kind of very suddenly. And then for a while, I even kind of went back and forth, like maybe I should just get another job in retail and then try to figure it out while I'm doing that job. Like, I don't know if I'm brave enough to like not work like and take the time to actually figure this out. Like I went back and forth about that for a few months. And then I just decided like I'm already out here, like I might as well just stay and figure it out. It can't get any worse. So it definitely didn't get any worse. It got better. So I know I wouldn't change the way that I did it, but I would definitely advise others to, to have a more deliberate approach.
Gotcha. Okay, so what's next for you in work and in life?
What's next in work? I mean, right now I'm taking a fiction writing class with Gotham Writers Workshop because I really want to do a fiction book this year. And I think I'm going to go the traditional route. And after I write it, start shopping it either to a small publisher or try to find an agent. So I definitely have that on my radar. It's very big this year. It's not that not that I couldn't write a fiction book before, but I think, it's been a very long time since I've written any fiction. I spend all week long writing nonfiction, and that comes to me very naturally, but fiction doesn't. And I found myself trying to write fiction the way I write nonfiction, and like some things work, but a lot of things don't transfer. So I'm honing my craft right now, and I'm going to be working on a book. It's going to be a diverse story. I've had a story that I wanted to tell for a long time that involves, a story about a queer Black young man and navigating the dating world and relationship with family and these things. So I definitely want to dive into that before this year is over. And I'm considering doing another essay book and publishing on my own before the year is over because, shopping a fiction book takes time. And even if I finish a book in 30 days, it's not going to get published this year unless I do it myself. So I definitely want to do another fiction book. And in life, we're going to keep traveling and having fun. And we're going to get a dog this year. And it's going to be our little person experiment.
It's nice. What kind of dog are you thinking of getting?
I'm not sure. We're going to adopt. We'll do a rescue dog. So I'm not sure. We'll have to see, which little man or woman is available for us when we go to the shelter.
Very cool. I remember, it'll definitely be an upgrade from your dying plant, at least that you mentioned at the end of your book. I thought that was hilarious, by the way.
Yes, and she's still alive. The plant is still alive.
Oh, awesome. All right. So before we close, what do you want people watching to do right now?
What I want them to do, I want them to go to my website, to uptownbourgeois.com. There are a ton of essays to read, things that are not in the book. And I've done 4 essays already this year. Things about social media, about entrepreneurship, about protesting. So I think there's definitely some good long form reads there. So I definitely want people to go and read and immerse themselves in the Uptown Bourgeois experience.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Jeffrey. I really appreciate it. I had a great conversation with you.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was great.
All right, and thank you all for watching. Lastly, you can escape to a magical world full of intrigue and adventure. Just click the card at the corner and subscribe. Taste of my book, Pangea Unsettled Land. I kind of botched that, but whatever. You get what I'm trying to say. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.